Good morning and welcome back to the Closers Inner Circle podcast with me, Denise Griffitts, and my brilliant co-host and mentor, Ben Gay III. Now, this episode of the Closers Inner Circle is proudly sponsored by Cynthia Kay. She is also known as CK. She's the founder of Cynthia Kay and Company, which is an award-winning media production firm and a leading voice in small business leadership. With over 35 years of experience, she helps entrepreneurs grow with clarity and confidence. And CK is also someone I have great respect for. Learn more about her at cynthiakbiz.com. So today we're diving into a topic that's been stirring up a lot of conversation behind the scenes. What's still working in high ticket sales and what's not? Look, the truth is the market is noisy. Flashy funnels, pushy persuasion tactics, really pushy persuasion tactics, and AI generated scripts are absolutely everywhere. But seasoned professionals like Ben know that real selling, the kind that builds trust, delivers value, and closes with integrity, hasn't changed all that much through the years. So today, Ben breaks down timeless sales principles that still drive results today, the traps that he sees people falling into, and why hype will really not ever replace true human connection. And I'm saying that deliberately, not replace true human connection. That's important. So if you're serious about mastering the art of high trust, high impact sales in a saturated market, you're in the right place. And as always, I highly recommend that you have the closers part 1 and part 2 in front of you as we dive into this conversation. Ben often references real lessons straight from those pages, and particularly part 2. You'll want to follow along and take notes. So, good morning, Ben.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm here. I'm peachy. And I said it the right way, right? And so I'm peachy, darn it.
Yeah,
So,
we got to
there's
get
two
a
ways of
trend.
saying, yeah, well, there's two ways of saying, I'm peachy. It's all good. If I say I'm peachy, go to another zip code, come back later.
We've got to get a translator on here for our non-Southern friends who can leap in and say, "Okay, now what that meant was, I had a, I forget who it was now, but a nice person I communicate with uh, put 'bless your heart' into something. It was a female.
Right. I did it
Bless you."
this morning on Twitter, but I made it worse because in the deep South, if we say bless your heart, that means oh, poor you.
Yeah.
We're not
Or
being but we're
here's
not
what
being
you can
unkind.
do. Here's what you can do with that opinion.
Y-
Bless your heart has many meanings. And what I
It
was
does.
saying to that lady was, I know in my heart, since you're not Southern, that you mean that from the bottom of your heart. Let me tell you what it means. And she said, "Oh
Right.
my God," she said, "I say it all the time."
And listen, what I did this morning on Twitter, and I try not to respond to too much garbage on Twitter, but when I say bless their little hearts, that
Hmm.
means they are too stupid for that to ever wash off. So if you hear somebody say that, they mean it. You're dumb, and they're not going to play in the sand pile with you.
Cavett Robert, the great old speaker who founded the National Speakers Association with us, there were three of us. He used to say, uh, lovingly but frequently, "Ben Gay can tell you to go to hell and have you looking forward to the trip." And he said, Cavett was Southern too. He said, that's because he's Southern. So it was apparently I was saying things that were the male equivalent of "bless your heart."
Oh, well, you've actually said some to me before. I didn't cry, but I thought about it. Did that work?
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, sincerity costs extra. I'll try again another time.
Sincerity is great. Once you learn how to fake that, you got it made.
There you go. We were talking earlier in the green room. You were reading my newsletter from LinkedIn this morning, and you were sharing with me that there are two words that you have been trying to kind of beat out of people's vernacular. Gig is one of them, and pitch is another. So let's talk about that because that was actually a very important conversation we were having.
Well, your email was extremely well written, as always. but you must have said pitch in it 15 times in 6 or 7 paragraphs. And to our listeners, I'm giving up. I want you to know I'm not easily defeated, but I'm giving up. I speakers use the term, a lot of speakers use the term gigs. They got to get some more gigs, GIGS, and they mean opportunities to speak, get paid, and so on. Gigs is a slang show business term that people in show business who really are looking for their next gig, their next comedy stand up somewhere. That's what they mean, but even they mean it in a sleazy term. And then pitches is the other one. Pitches are what people at county fairs are giving, selling vegetable choppers. That's their pitch. It's not what sophisticated salespeople say or do or get caught at. A pitch, for those of you who are old enough, there used to be on various old comedy shows and variety shows, almost each one of them had a character, in costume who'd come out and sell you something. And they were making fun of him because he was the old-fashioned sleazy salesperson. Even Johnny Carson, as recently as Johnny Carson, and that really ages me because he's been off the air over 30 years, but he was the best at what he did. He had a character called Art Fern, and that he changed his clothing and he became Art Fern. Art Fern gave pitches and so on. So I repeat, I'm gonna drop it. This may be the last time I talk about it, but if you're a speaker, you don't give gigs, you give sales presentations or speeches or seminars or what have you, because saying gigs plays into what they already think of you, which is those who can do, those who can't teach. So when you're the person at the front of the room, you already suspect. They wonder if you've really done that or if you just heard somebody else talk about it and now it's your turn. Um, and pitches, the same thing. If they catch you giving a pitch, it means you're a sleazy, dishonest salesperson. And but I repeat, I've given up. I see pitch all over emails, all over voicemails, etc. And I've decided to pick my battle. This may be the last time I mention either one of them. But if you're listening and you're out among them, I would suggest you drop gigs and pitches. And Denise, you said this morning, but that's the way they talk in podcast world, for instance. It may be what they do, but it's not what we should be doing. As my mother used to say, if so and so jumped off the bridge, would you go with him? That's well, it depends on who it was, but I get your point. I shouldn't do it. Bill Patrick, William Penn Patrick, was the owner of Holiday Magic when I was the president of it, and he was from Roper, North Carolina. And his office was at the very back of the building. Mine was at the very front. So if we encountered each other casually, it was usually in that long hallway walking past each other. And I would say, as we got near, hey, and he would say, hello, Benjamin, and we'd go on our way. One day I said, hey, to him, being a good Southerner, and he spun around. He said, would you quit? We don't say hey in the sophisticated world. That's what we said back in the South before we knew better.
Oh,
So,
crud. I say it all the time. So I say
yeah.
pitch, I don't use gig, but I do say, hey, okay, I have to go sit down and think about this.
As you know, I use the exit version of that when you and I are finished. I go, bye.
Yeah. And we make it, buy is not a single syllable. It's two, three, like
Oh,
gas. Gas is
absolutely.
three syllables.
Yeah.
Any way you cut it. If anybody says gas, you're like, what? What are you yelling? What was that? That sounded rude. But it's gas. So it's three syllables. You're not doing it right.
Well, I trained away a lot of my Southern accent when I moved to California and was given 300 speeches a year and so on, because I thought maybe it made me sound ignorant. Zig told me at the time, he said, Ben, you're making a mistake there. And I said, why? He said, people love Southern accents. He said, but mention it. Don't just start talking. Mention it. You know, if you have trouble understanding my Southern accent, raise your hand. I'll translate for you. Make it, if you have a built-in objection, bring it up first and brag about it. But he said, but don't get rid of it. So what I do is when I'm giving a talk, I turn my Southern accent back on a little bit, not like it used to be, but back on a little bit because people like it. But to keep in mind, and I always mention it, keep in mind there are certain trigger words. Gigs is one, pitches is one, hey is another. Uh, there are certain trigger words that make people think maybe you're not as bright, or in the case of gigs and pitches, maybe you're what I feared, you're sleazy. So I'm just suggesting that you will make more money if you don't use it, but I don't care anymore. I've
Yes,
been
you do. We had a long talk in the virtual green room, and I'm going to bring it up again just to bug you. So
thank you.
just so you know.
I
But
appreciate
listen,
it.
I agree with you, but what I was explaining in the virtual green room is that that's where they live. I mean, I get because of my podcast, Your Partner in Success Radio, which is wildly popular. It's in the part, it's 1.5% of the most popular in the world. And it's 17 years old. It's got legs. But I get pitches, and I just did that in air quotes for
Mhm.
you daily. Daily. I mean, Monday through Sunday, and sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning, they are coming hard, fast, and furious. And I've learned I don't ever just say no. I will respond to every one of them and say, no, this is not a good fit. It's just rude not to respond. And,
Mhm.
maybe they'll come up with something down the road like, oh, I like that one. But the thing is, that's how they send it. It's a pitch from them. So what I was explaining to you is that I'm just going where they live. But I also like what you said to replace that word pitch. So say that again, and I'm going to write it down this time.
Sales presentation.
There you go. I'm going to write it down.
And
And I'm
after
going to
you
go,
use
yeah,
that once in a document, then you can just say presentation.
okay.
You
I'm
know,
going to go back into my newsletter and do a bit of correcting and blame you.
thank you.
No problem.
I wasn't there
Credit where
for this.
credit is due.
I wasn't there for this exchange, but Gigi had a brother who died 4th of July a year or so ago, almost 2 years ago. Um, and he used, from time to time, he was sort of an outdoors, mountain man, used questionable English, although he knew better. He was educated well and raised by good people. And his mother criticized him one day, and he said, "But Mom, that's where all my friends talk." She said,
Right.
"They won't notice if you talk properly. You don't have to join them to be accepted. Speak properly and go on about your business. No one's going to say, 'Hey, you didn't say ain't,' you know." And so he cleaned up a little bit with just that one little piece of advice. All my friends talk that way. Fine, but you don't have to, and they won't
Hmm.
know. No one's ever going to say, I don't like you. You use proper English."
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And if you hear me say the word ain't, it's because I'm making a point, and
Oh, sure.
I do it with this. Like you and I have had this. I don't have an accent. I have a drawl. Accents are regional, and I do not sound Cajun. Nobody does with them, and I'm not even sure they sound like each other. But you and I both have a bit of a drawl, but we can exaggerate it when we feel like we need to make a point.
Oh, sure. I quote Brother Dave Gardner and Louis Grizzard frequently because I just found them delightful Southerners. One of them, I forget who it was, would tell stories and said, "So I said to myself,
Oh,
self say, huh?"
I thought, what's it that fake Cajun cook used to do that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What was his name? I couldn't stand to
I don't
listen
know. I
to.
can see him.
Yeah, yeah,
And he
he
did
was
a
from
thing in the
Mississippi.
backyard, and the neighbor's
Yeah,
blind dog would wander onto the set.
right. Right.
Like,
And I'm like you, I can see him, but I can't remember his name. I just know that whenever I came across him, I go, ooh, and I'd shut it down. So I just couldn't stand him. I don't know why. Everything about him bugged me. What the heck was his name? Anyway, let's talk about, I mean, we're talking about real selling, but I think, and let's go back to what I was saying, that we're getting hammered all the time. Email, you watch a lot of commercials. I try to never watch them. Flashy. The market is noisy. It's flashy. It's pushy. AI. Oh my gosh, it's everywhere. But you and I have talked about this before in the past and multiple times. The real sales persuasion doesn't really change.
no,
Because you've had people say, well, what's changed, from the time that you wrote this book and what's changed now? And you always say nothing.
no, hasn't changed since the silk traders were
Right.
sailing across the ocean. Hasn't changed since the Yankee peddler was riding up and down the East Coast on horseback. People want to know what's in it for them. They want to know, like, trust, and feel safe with you. And therefore, they want to feel confident that they are getting a quality product or service that's competitively priced, um, and that you're not wasting their time. You're talking to people who are in the market, could be in the market to buy something like that. It's really simple. What's changed is the technology. It used to be more expensive. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I've driven to see people in the southeastern United States because that was cheaper than getting on a long distance phone call, if it was going to last any length of time. And I could, drive to, name us at Charlotte, North Carolina, and call on 5 people while I was there and spend less time leaving messages that were never returned and so on. So now it's gotten, long ago, it got to long distance calls are pennies. And I think nothing of making a call and it doesn't work out or poorly timed or whatever makes no difference at all. But in the old days, that was a consideration. But whether I drove to them or phoned them, um, and we didn't have emails and all those things, when I got their attention physically, mentally, on the trying to think of the word, orally listening to me on the phone, when I got their attention, it all stayed the same. And you and I have talked about that numerous times when I have one particular client in mind who's an investment banker. And whenever I'm with them, there's about 15 people around the table. They're all $1 million producers, millionaires, or they wouldn't be around that table. And I sit and I tell them about it after a while because I found they like it and find it funny. I put a 3 by 5 card in front of me, propped up at a little angle on something. So it's right in my face and it says investment banker. And the reason I do that is to remind myself what these people do. I put a similar sign up when I'm talking to Kirby vacuum cleaner people, or when I'm talking to timeshare people, or what have you. What I teach them is pretty much the same. I don't try and match wits with them on the technicalities of their industry. I have a call coming up that's going to be a regular like ours on Wednesday afternoon with Mark Harris and his crowd of several thousands of realtors could potentially be on any given call. I'll have a card in front of me that says that they are realtors to remind me to just throw the word realtor into the conversation occasionally, and or investment banker or vacuum cleaners or what have you. The transmission techniques have changed. AI is now the latest thing, and it's just absolutely amazing, I'm told. I've been through all of the other amazing events of the past. Remember when the clock or the calendar turned 2000 and the whole world was going to come to an end because of the computer programming and so on? I went to bed and she said, "What are we going to do in the morning?" I said, "We'll get up and see if our
That was
computer works."
Y2K, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Darn it.
Y2K. I said, "We'll get up in the morning and see if our computer works.
Okay,
If it
hang on.
does,
I
we'll
can't hear
go on
you.
about our business. If it doesn't, then we'll worry about that then. And there'll be somebody selling a solution to that problem." But as it turned out, it was a big nothing event. And that's sort of what I've experienced throughout my life. It changes, but it changes so slowly. And the core principles don't change. I don't care how it came to me by AI, email, smoke signals, Pony Express. What I want to know is what's in it for me. Is it better to have your product and service in my hands than my money in my pocket? If it is, we'll make an exchange. If it's not, there's nothing you can say or do. I've written or co-written or whatever 35 books, most of them selling sales or whatever. There's one close that I use almost every time. It's the reason I have an 86% closing rate, and I've maintained that for years, and probably will never significantly improve it because it's sort of like gig and pitches. I've given up. I can get it up to 85, down to 85, and up to 87 for about 30 minutes, but it's always 86%. The presentation doesn't change. The products and services, though, have changed. I've sold many, many different things, counting mass merchandising at Macy's. I've literally sold thousands of different things to hundreds of thousands of people. And with every one of them, as I approach them, "Hi, I'm Ben Gay," I'm thinking, let's make this person a friend, a trusted friend, as quickly as humanly possible. Let's ask questions and listen carefully to their answer. Be a dynamic listener, as they used to say of Nelson Mandela, an
Right.
acute observer. Pay attention to their answer because they're going to tell me what they want. And then have have for every item I'm talking about what I call a script chunk. It's not a whole, "Hi, my name's Ben Gay," and I go on for 40 minutes. It's if we're going to talk about the frying pan, here's the same 15 words I use every time I describe the frying pan or the lawnmower. I'm thinking Macy's in my head, or the franchise as I moved up the thing, or the business opportunity, whatever. I work with script chunks. Once I find out something will work, why would I change it? It's like the one close that I use. Most of my closes come down to this, plus or minus a word or two, because maybe something just happened in the presentation. But basically, it's, well, based on what you've told me, or based on what we've been talking about, here's what I suggest we do. And I don't go we like that. I'm doing that for our listeners now. Everything is we. Here's what we do. Our youngest son is down in Los Angeles right now. He works in upscale hotels, making the hotel rooms impossible to get in. Remember when we used to have a key and the door open? It was no problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and
He
you'd
now,
put a chair under the doorknob.
yeah, yeah. He
My
now
parents used to do that, and I'm like, that doesn't work. They thought it did.
made him feel better.
Yeah.
He now puts in the retina identifiers and turn around 3 times and wave your card endlessly, and so on. You
You're
can get in.
exaggerating, right?
Yeah, well,
About the
I
turning
had to
around three
call him one time.
times.
We were in Pasadena and I couldn't get in my room, and he was in Chicago. And so I called him on his cell phone and I said, "You've probably been to this hotel and personally screwed up the lock to my room, but help me get in."
Yeah, that's
And
gonna make him just jump right on it.
it was wave the card and do this and look in the hole and so on. And miraculously, the door opened. I said, "What do you think about having a key to get in the room?" He said, "No, no, that would put me out of business."
Ah.
So, but anyway, here's a sales
So you didn't
infiltration.
have to turn around 3 times and do the hokey pokey?
No,
Oh, I would have paid for that.
he is now today he's down in the last few days down in Los Angeles on the fringes
Oh,
of the
no.
riot area. They've had protests right in front of his hotel. He's at the Biltmore Hotel, and they
Mm-mm.
didn't want people working there, and he technically is for a week or so. They didn't want them going out to local restaurants for fear they'd get caught up in whatever's going on. So they said, and they have elaborate dining rooms and matching costs and so on. And the guy said, "Oh, if you don't mind, you can eat in the employees' cafeteria at no charge." And Tony said, "Well, that would be nice, thank you." And he was saying, "Dad, the food wasn't bad at all. Had far worse." He said it's cafeteria food, but the good news is it didn't cost me $50 a plate. It was free. And I said, "Well, you've learned a great lesson." He's been on the road. He's eaten in employee cafeterias before, but I said, "Here's a great thing. They all have employee cafeterias, if they're of any size at all, or a snack bar, or the free line, or something. So become a sales infiltrator. When you check into the hotel, say, now, where is the employee cafeteria so I know where to go?" And it's an assumptive sales infiltrator statement.
See,
It's
I
not.
I never even knew that, and I wouldn't have thought of that. But it's kind of the same thing. You land in a little dusty town in, I don't know, Northern California, Lodi,
Mhm.
and you ask the first person walking down the street, where's the best Mexican food? It's right there. Okay, thanks.
Yep,
The same thing, right?
yep.
Okay.
The best clam chowder on earth is in Nye Beach, Oregon, and it's called the Chowder Bowl. And I'm from New England originally, so I know a little bit about clam chowder. It is the best. And the way that we found it, I walked in the post office because I had a priority mail thing I had to drop in the slot while we were on the road. And I said to a guy who was standing at the counter, you always tell the local he's going through his mail and throwing things in the trash can. So he lives there, obviously. And I said, "Excuse me, where's the best restaurant in town?" He didn't even look up. He said, "Chowder Bowl, get the New England clam chowder." Never looked up. I said, "Fine." Oh, as I hit the door, I said, "Where is it?" He said, "Drive down the hill to the beach." The best clam chowder on earth by far. Uh, but that's how you find it. You go to a local and ask them. And Tony now knows that he's paid for a lot of meals he probably didn't have to pay for because he didn't ask. If they didn't invite him, he went to the restaurant and ordered the
See,
same food.
that's really
But
good to know.
yeah, between the employees' cafeteria and the real dining room, there's a kitchen, and they're feeding both sides. The only difference is
Oh,
the door it comes out of. So he's
oh,
been
that's
down
just
there eating.
brilliant. But you're
Yeah,
right, it's sales infiltration.
yep.
Okay, keep going. I'll stay out of your way.
No, no,
Well,
no.
I'll try to stay out
Uh,
of your way.
you
I'm not
won't stay
making
out of
any
my way. Who do you
promises.
think you're talking to?
Well, that's why I amended my statement.
So anyway, he'll probably save $100 a day for the rest or more the rest of his career with these nice people because he now knows that there is an employee cafeteria and he's sort of an employee at least for the
Right.
few days. He got on the polo shirt with a indicia of his company on it, and uh, where's the employee cafeteria? Isn't asking permission; it's asking location.
It's an assumption. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Huh. Well, that is really good. And there's so many different ways that you can say, hang on a second. Where are the employees eating? Where, like when I mentioned Lodi, I wasn't joking. It was in Lodi, and I love Mexican food. It's my favorite food ever. And I was starving to death, jumped out, asked a person. She said, well, it's, right. I mean, I could walk to it. It was just a couple doors down. It was so tiny, Ben, that you had to turn sideways to use the toilet in the bathroom. It was that tiny. And it was a woman and her daughter, and everything was fresh. I asked them, they didn't speak English, but I finagled my way into the kitchen because I was watching them make real tortillas, real salsa. Everything was just built right there. It was made right there. And I kept saying, "I think I love you guys." They understood that part, but food
Yeah.
the food was the best Mexican food I've ever had, and it was straight from the heart of these 2 women. Nobody else came in while we were there, and I was fine with that, but I'd tell I called my mom. I was on my way to her house. I said, "How much Mexican food do you want?" She said, "What'd you find?" I took home a buffet worth. I think I made their week. It was just that good. I haven't been back. It's been a long time. They may not be there, but oh my God.
Well, that's neat when you find a place like that. We used to drive from mother was from New England, and that's where mom and dad met and got married, and where I was born, actually, in Springfield, Massachusetts. So we spent a lot of time zipping up and down the East Coast in the summer, visiting aunts and uncles and so on. And my father had two speeds in any car he drove, 90 miles an hour or parked. And so he had a big old Lincoln Continental convertible, one of the classic American cars. And I can't tell you how many times I'd be in the back half asleep or asleep, and I'd hear the rumbling of the gravel and look up, and we were skidding to a stop in front of a truck stop cafe. That this was traveling food, not for taking out aunts and uncles
Mhm.
entertainment, but traveling food. He always went with the truck where the most trucks were. He said they drive up and down this road all the time. They've had good food, bad food, and so on. If you drive past a cafe that's got 20 tractor trailers out in front of it, that's where you want to eat.
Right. And if
So,
you're looking at Mexican restaurants, if they've got a bunch of neon, keep going. You're
oh, is
looking
that
for the
right?
trucks that are up on,
Yeah.
bricks, they're up on blocks and everything's beat up looking. That's where you want to go eat.
It's same theory as with the big trucks. Let the cumulative wisdom of the crowd, guide you,
Right. Right.
and that guy never got his name. We didn't spend 15 seconds together, but I can still picture him and what he was doing with his mail and where he was standing. And, "Where's the best restaurant in the area, sir?" "Chowder Bowl."
You just have
"Okay."
to ask.
And I didn't know what
Yeah.
that meant. That didn't necessarily mean clam chowder. It's just chowder
Right.
bowl. But he was so defended. He was a local and definitive. Therefore, we're done. And that sort of ties into that. I wrote about it on Facebook a few days ago about the value of testimonials and the how they work so much. We all know that sort of, but I'm guilty of not using as many, um, "This book is great," or "This guy's great," or "His seminars are great," dash Pat Hall, Ventura, California. That value that the personalized testimonial puts on it, and the one I wrote on Facebook was I have seen for months on the you said I watch a lot of television commercials. I do it for 2 reasons. One, I'm
Well,
a
it's
new
business for you.
yeah, I'm a
For
news
me, it would
junkie,
be agony. I
and
I
if
can't
if
do it, but I
if
know why you do.
World War III breaks out, I'd sort of like to be able to bring it up in the next conversation on the phone to look mildly, informed, and, the other reason I do it is I get clients by tracking down who ran the ad with a horrible spot in it or the bad picture or the misuse of the English language or whatever. So I have it's sort of like I'll look at something that's advertising or direct mail or television commercials, and there's something in there that is costing them money, even though the customer may not be aware of it, may be subliminal, but it's just wrong. And I kid about it, but in my head I hear ding, 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 ding. That's wrong. So I picked up a lot of clients watching the news. The thing about add an exclamation mark to the disclaimer at the bottom of the Medicare ads that swamp the airwaves once a year when it's time to swap your supplement programs over. The warning at the bottom was you're going to talk to a licensed insurance agent. The way they worded it, it sounded like bad news. So one of my clients, I'm watching, and one of my clients pops up, and I read it probably for the 50th time, but it hadn't clicked in. So I called him immediately. I said, let's put an exclamation mark at the end of that. You're going to talk to a licensed insurance agent, exclamation mark. It went from a warning to good news. You're not going to talk to somebody who's got this as a part-time gig in a call center somewhere and doesn't know beans about insurance.
And they're from the Philippines.
Yeah, and in the Philippines, punch one for English, then you do it, and here comes the heaviest accent. I thought, why did I do that? But anyway, we changed by watching television. I spotted that one thing, added the exclamation mark, and I forget the figure, but it was substantial, like 30% or more additional calls, and no reluctance about talking to this dreaded insurance agent that we turned that into a bonus. But that's acute awareness, dynamic listening, the things where if you do it, they will tell you what they want to buy and how they want to buy it and when they want to buy it. You just got to listen. I bought a car one time before I started buying lots of cars as contests. This was still my car, individual, and so on. And the guy said to me, I smile every time I think about it because I didn't catch it at the time. Yeah, I said, now this is pretty, it was one of my first Cadillacs. He said, this is a pretty wide car. Will it fit in your garage? And I said, oh yeah. I was thinking about that. This is the water heater and all, but it'll go right over here and so on. And his tone just changed. He relaxed. He became my friend because I had just told him I bought the car.
In your head, all
Yeah,
you needed was what color is it?
yeah. We're down to color. The I know what I'm getting. I've already decided where I'm going to park it. I've already placed it beside the hot water heater, and that's not going to be a problem, and so on. And he did everything but get out the order pad and start writing it up. He was too smooth to be that obvious. But by listening, he figured out the decision was made. We're just down to writing it up. And so, anyway, dynamic listening, acute observation will make you all sorts of money. During the week, I made a couple of quick notes. I had mentioned, I don't know if it was here or somewhere, that Mark Levine or is a friend of mine. That's friend in quotes. I haven't been to his house. He hasn't been to mine, but he's the conservative commentator on Fox News.
Yeah, I think we talked about him last week.
Yeah, Sean Hannity calls him the Great One.
Right.
And the way we made contact, I think somebody said, how did you make contact with Mark Levine? And the answer was, I had picked up a term either at San Quentin or Lompoc when I was working in and around prisons for 11 and a half years. I heard somebody say, or we figured out watching, observing people, prison isn't where you are, it's where you aren't. And I wrote that in something, and Mark Levine, I didn't even know he was following my stuff, wrote in and said that's one of the greatest things. He made a thing out of it on his program the next day or so. So the answer is, how'd you do it? I wrote something semi-profound, and Mark Levin happened to see it. And then somewhere along the line, you and I had talked about the flags outside auto dealerships and auto malls, which are all over the place now. And I have a claim to fame with both of them to answer his question of how do I have anything to do with that. Marin Bay Lincoln Mercury, where I bought my first 300 luxury cars. I was having trouble getting signage in front of their dealership in San Rafael, California, Marin County, and with all their snobism. And they didn't want his sign. It was sort of like St. Augustine, Florida. They didn't want his sign to be more than 15 inches long and 6 inches high on wood. And he's on a freeway with cars buzzing by at 80 miles an hour and then a busy side road. It would have done him no good. You'd have to be curious about why are all those cars parked over there to even go into his dealership. So I said, having probably seen one somewhere, uh, here's an idea. Let me order for you a flagpole. And I'm making up feet, but whatever it was, I sort of had an idea at the time, 40 feet tall or whatever. And then I called a flag company in Ohio and found out the biggest flag I could get that was still official was called a brigade flag, enormous. And so I bought that. And then I said to Herc, the guy who was having this problem, I said, Herc, I got an idea. I've ordered the flagpole. I've ordered the flag. We're going to put it up. But we're not going to put it up. We're going to have the VFW, Veterans of the Foreign Wars, and
Uh-huh.
the
I see
American
where
Legion.
you're going. You can't fight with that.
With the empty guns and bugles playing and everything.
Right.
And I said, we'll just put that up without warning. One day it'll go up. Maybe it'll notice in the paper the day before, so it'll have a little crowd. And I dared the city fathers of San Rafael to come take down an American flag that's just been put up by veterans. And there, it's no
See,
longer
this is
Lincoln.
why we're friends.
So we did, and
I
it
love the way you think.
flew for years. And then this is when I'm sort of the stepfather of this idea. Two people that work for me, Bob, twin brothers, Bob and Bill Pettit. They're both gone now. Uh, as one of Bob, I think, was coming to work for me to start with, they still had an advertising agency, and among their clients were they didn't have them all, but among their clients were auto dealers in Roseville, California. And they were all beating each other over the heads with their wallet. Come over here and buy my Chevrolet. No, go over here and buy my Volvo, so and so. So what they did was the Pettit brothers gathered them together and said, you are now the Roseville gang, as in one entity. And rather
Hmm.
than you each have a television account or a newspaper account, we'll have one, and your 1/20th of it will be far less than each 20 of you buying your own. And we'll call it the Roseville Gang, and we'll feature two or three of you in every ad, good naturedly fighting among yourselves or kidding among yourselves or what have you. And they did that, and it worked very well. The Roseville Gang. But then somewhere, and I don't know the exact evolution, I wasn't there, but then someone, the Pettit brothers or the dealers themselves or someone said, rather than fight each other, we're the Roseville Gang now, why don't we get some land? Roseville at the time was out in the country outside of Sacramento far enough where you could still get reasonable land. Let's get a bunch of land and put all of our dealerships on it. Hence the beginning of auto malls in the United States. So when you go by an auto mall now, that's a stepchild of mine via the Pettit brothers. And if there's a big flag on one or all of the places, that's a stepson of Marin Bay, Lincoln, Mercury not being able to put their sign up. So you can get creative. They could all still be fighting each other, banging each other over the head with their wallets. None of them with an identifiable uh, focal point, no flag. Or you can get creative and say, here's this problem we got. How do we solve it? And part of that was done in focus groups, or what I prefer to call mastermind groups, like Dr. Hill taught me. You put 15 or 20 people in a room and tell them to solve a problem. An hour or so later, you got a solution because the cumulative wisdom of a bunch of semi-intelligent people will do wonders for the creative process. And if you're the salesperson, you make sure you're the uh, drum major of that movement. You don't have to do it. I didn't buy the land for the Roseville Auto Mall. I didn't pay for the flag or the pole at Marin Bay Lincoln Mercury. I didn't do much of anything but point. Let's how about this? How about this? How about this? And then you get all the dealers in one room as to how they're going to run their advertising. It was a miracle. And then, last but not least, and I'll do whatever you want with our remaining time, I was asked during the week, have I ever sold anything that I regretted? And I think we've touched on one of these before, but the answer is yes. When I worked at Macy's in downtown Atlanta, it was called Davison's, but it was Macy's. We sold in the housewares department. Among the things we sold was lawnmowers, and we had the Handy Andy. It was $39.99, a 30-inch swath, single blade, rotary lawn, not rotary, whatever you call the other type of lawnmower. It cuts around in a circle. And then in came the Foley quad cut. And I'd been in the lawn mowing business, I say, the royal we that were I was 14, but I had 20, 25 kids working for me mowing yards. So I knew a little bit about lawn mowing. And here's the Foley quad cut with a 42-inch swath instead of 30, which means I used to know the numbers. You had to walk around the yard 20% less or whatever it was. So you get the job done 20% quicker and get your money 20% faster. And the secret to it was one drive shaft. It looked like a boomerang, good looking lawnmower. One drive shaft came down out of the engine to a thing that had four bands on it, not unlike the band that's in the front of a car. I don't even know. I know so little about cars. I don't know what you call it, but a big thick
I don't
band
have a
on
clue. I
yeah,
know what the key, I know where the key goes.
yeah, big thick rubber band, for lack of a better thing. I think it runs the cooling system or something. The Foley quad cut had four of those. From that one drive shaft, it went out to each of four blades. So instead of one great big thing cutting down grass clumsily and perhaps not beautifully, had four, giving it sort of a manicure. And I thought, okay, 20% faster. Briggs and Stratton engine, they're good. I knew that. Clever design. And then they were going out of business. So my buyer, Cy Fisher, bought the last 500 on Earth and put them on the floor and said, Ben, this is made for you. You're a man, and these little ladies that work here may not have the
Okay, hang on.
authenticity.
Nobody asked why they were going out of business.
No,
Okay,
perhaps looking back, that would have been a
keep
great
going.
question.
Yeah.
But they put a spiff on them. I forget how much it was. Let's say it was $5. Well, that means it's $50 in today's money on top of your regular little commission. Every time I sold one of those lawnmowers, I made five, call it 50 today on each one. And so I, if you walked in there to get a fry pan, you wound up looking at a Foley quad cut before you left. And I sold them all 500 personally in probably a month or so, 6 weeks at the most. And it was a huge home run. Then one day I'm out in the warehouse where the lawnmower repair was done and things were stored. And I look over, and this guy who ran that little area, his name was Benny, a black guy, wonderful gentleman. And I see the Foley quad cuts stacked up in the corner, probably 100 of them, one on top of another. I said, Benny, what's with the Foley quad cuts? Why are they over there? And he says, I don't know. One of you guys got excited about selling them. I decided at that moment not to tell him it was me. And and he said they forgot about the moist grass in Georgia. So what
Uh-oh.
happens is, since it's not a straight, hard shot from the engine to the blade, it goes out through these rubber bands, they get belts, they get moist, and then they slip, and then they won't cut. So he said that's every one of those over there was returned for repair because of that problem. He says nothing I can do about it. It's the design of the Foley quad cut.
So they needed
So
to go to another state.
yeah, to a desert area.
Yeah.
So anyway, I love the concept, still love it. I can remember the name Foley Quad Cut, and that's 30 plus years ago. Um, but it was a bad idea, and I sold 500 of them, many to friends, uh, and they didn't work. So the answer was yes. And then there was another one. It wasn't a bad idea. I was just too soon. A friend of mine became the vice president of sales for the first video game, Pong. You sat down at a table, put your quarter in, and this ball bounced back and forth between you, and not a ball, but a electronic thing between you and the person sitting across the table from you. And we sold them for, I don't know, $2,000 each or whatever they were. And then we placed them. People wouldn't know what to do, so they placed them in pizza shops and so on. And the deal was, in the industry, it's standard. The guy who owns the restaurant, guy or lady, gets 50% of the money in the box, and the owner of the machine gets the other 50%. And if the manager is trying to stoke business, he puts a little nail polish logo across the quarters he gives out. So when you divide the money up at the end of the week or month or what have you, he first gets his marked coins back, and then it's 50-50 on the rest. So I sold this guy. I was really excited about it, enjoyed playing the game, but I apparently was a cult of one, in that the company hadn't grown into the giant that it later became, and people didn't know what Pong was, and they wanted to use their quarter in the pinball machine over in the corner. So this guy who brought a bunch up, 2025 up for investment, calls me and he says, I'm going to pick up today, and I'm picking up from the pizza place in San Rafael. Do you mind going with me? I said, no, I'd love to. I'd like to see you get your first payout. We go in, no one's on the machine. That was probably a problem. Should have spotted. He gets out his key, opens the machine. The manager or the owner comes over, and we look into the cash box. There's one quarter, and it has the nail polish across it. So there was nothing to divide up. The guy just got his quarter back, which led us to doing all sorts of things, contests, lessons, etc. And we finally were able to turn it around, and then the machines got better. But along with the Foley quad cut, I sold it with the best of intentions. I sold a ton of them. It was the forerunner to Atari, uh, which went on to great things, but Pong wasn't one of the great things. So lesson learned, and a few of the things I've done wrong over the years by mistake. Once did a seminar in Fresno, California, and I don't know if I had a hangover. I was drinking in those days. I had a hangover, or uh, just didn't want to be in Fresno, California, or
Oh
what
God,
have
who
you.
would? Or Bakersfield. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, but anyway, I gave a horrible seminar, and at the end of it, I said, "Okay, I don't want you going out and telling people Ben Gay gives bad seminars and how much money you lost." I forget how much it was, $75 a head. I gave them all their money back. So the Foley quad cut, the Pong video game, and a seminar one night in Fresno, California, were probably three of my biggest mistakes in selling. And Macy's made the Foley thing right. Um, Pong, Atari, and me, and a couple other people who had done the same thing, made the Pong things right eventually. And so you can get through them, but you really, I always say, sell a quality product that's competitively priced and so on. I thought they were quality products.
Right, and that's
But
why you were able to sell them.
yeah, one was ahead of its time, Pong, and the Foley quad cut was a bad idea, but boy, it looked good. It's like selling a brand new Cadillac with no engine in it, you know,
Hmm.
look good, but useless.
Right, right. And I was going to, we'll talk about this the next time, and we have talked about it before, but we are rapidly running out of time here. But you were talking about active listening a bit
Mhm.
ago, and
Dynamic listening.
dynamic listening, I'm sorry. And I wrote down take notes, and I'm pretty sure that you have shared with me that people don't get upset, even if you're sitting right in front of them and you're taking notes, because they know you are actually paying attention.
Yeah,
I
and
take a lot of notes. I'm taking notes while you and I are talking. Anytime I'm talking with a podcast guest here or with you or on my other show, I'm taking so many notes at half the time I don't know what I wrote down. I'm scribbling
absolutely.
like
And
crazy.
the way you get around that so people aren't offended or wondering what you're doing and clam up because they feel like they're dealing with a court reporter, you say to them, I'm really interested in what you're saying, and I don't want to miss a single point.
Mhm.
Do you mind if I take notes? No, well, no, of course not. And now you're free to note away, even if you're writing a letter to your mother. You know, you're writing things down. You have permission. You look like you're interested in what's going on, and it enables you to double back to set up the close I love based on what we've discussed. Blah blah blah. Here's what I suggest we do because you got the notes right in front of you and say, all right, let's go over these one more time. You asked about this. Do you understand the answer? You asked about this. Yes. You pleased with that? Yes. Top, pom, pom. Okay. Based on what we've discussed, here's what I suggest we do. So note taking can be a tremendous asset if you ask permission.
And
Great.
it can be bullet points. It doesn't have to
Oh,
be full
sure. No. Yeah.
sentences.
Yeah. You don't have to be a court stenographer, but you do need to unnerve them.
Right,
It's a
right.
little intimidating when everybody's writing down everything you're saying. You get cautious about what you're saying. And you
I
might
would
even say
think.
that if you find them being a little awkward or stiff because you're taking notes, remind them, I just don't want to forget anything. Don't let my note taking bother you at all.
Mhm. Exactly. Ben, we are out of time. This has been a
Right?
fast hour. Where can people find the closers books with free shipping? And by the way, my own contribution to the series, The Closers Part 4, Podcasting as Marketing, will be joining the lineup soon. And I
Yes.
can't wait. I can't wait. So where can people find one
That'll
and
be
two?
that'll be the closers part 4.
Yep.
And we already have 3 printed and ready to ship, and 5, the one in the middle there is still being done. So it's growing into a little Encyclopedia Britannica. The way you get your copy is you go to stores, stores dot ebay dot com /Ronzoni Books, all one word, RONZONEBOOKS, Ronzoni Books. There you'll find excellent pricing. And as long as you get new copies from Ronzoni Books, they've got some options there with used books and so on. We can't and don't guarantee those because I can't control whether there's bubble gum in the pages or they smell like they've been in a tobacco factory. But Ronzoni Books sends brand new books, signed, dated, with a lifetime money back guarantee. So do that.
Sounds good. Okay, listen, everybody, we appreciate you turning into this episode and all the other episodes of the Closers Inner Circle podcast. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please consider subscribing, rating, and leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. And send us your questions. We love to answer questions from our audience. Your support helps us reach more listeners and create even better content. Ben, I will see you next Wednesday.
You have a wonderful week, young lady.
I'm planning on it. Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye.